I always made a lot of art as a child. I was also very keen on cooking. I thought maybe I'd be a chef. I worked in a hotel kitchen for a summer. It was an appalling, terrible experience, so I decided that was not the thing to do. And I studied art history at university, and after that I painted in a room, expecting somebody to knock on the door and to invite me to put on a large exhibition. That didn't work. I began teaching and making art at the same time. So I have spent my adult life being an artist that does some teaching, sometimes 1 day a week, and more recently 3 days a week. So I have 3 days teaching, 3 days in my studio, 1 day cooking. My work in my 20s was painting. I painted and drew more than anything else. But I've always liked words, I've always liked collage, and gradually that took over, so that I started using found materials and seeing what they brought up, see what ideas they produced. And so my materials over the last 20-25 years have been maps that I use as a source for color, shape, line, information about the world, and I make what I think of as abstract paintings from pieces of map. A lot of my work floats in space, so it's not glued to a surface but is suspended, and that gives it a more sculptural, a more magical feeling. I also use text a lot, so whenever I read a book I cut it up simultaneously and take everything I want from it, and I use the covers as well as material for collages and for constructions. These are cheap paintings which have been made sincerely, with love, with passion, with ambition, but generally speaking have failed, and nobody wants them, nobody wants to put them on their wall, and I am touched by the effort of the artist, of each of these artists, but at the same time I am like a butcher or a farmer who likes the animal but is going to eat it anyway. So I have used predominantly landscapes and to make little constructions, actually little houses, and then in an exhibition I had in the main museum, Musée Hébert, I made titles of ideal worlds, ideal places, Elysium, Utopia, Paradise, Eden, made out of these little houses with the letters incised from the front of the house, from the painting, so that each word was made up of 7 or 8 different paintings by different individuals, none of whom I know, lost in time, but I feel that each of the paintings is somehow a relic of that person's caring, their love of nature, their wish to find a perfect place. I also use twigs a lot, and I use those for making abstract drawings, but more particularly to find little figures within the branches. And for the last year I have been involved in a project where I cut away branches to make a figure for the saint of the day. When this exhibition I was told about, that Guillaume was organizing, I thought, well, it would be interesting to make something which was very literal, that was a landscape that moved. And I had some paintings left from a collection of amateur paintings of the Mediterranean that I was given, and I had some others as well, and I decided I would make a little lorry, like a lorry that transports things, takes things, and perhaps takes one's imagination, one's heart, so that as a city dweller, I'm constantly thinking about somehow getting into a more perfect place, into nature, but it never quite pulls me enough for me to stay there. I come back to to London in my case. I've called it transport. It's the most basic word in English for something which moves, but it also, in English, and I think in French also, has a second meaning, that one can be transported by a piece of art, one can be transported by falling in love, one can be transported by music particularly, from your routine everyday life onto some higher realm, into a higher place. So I thought that the mundane little lorry would say this in a humble way. I very much like art that has a humility about it, has a modesty about it. That this would make plain the idea that somehow we can move from our boring everyday life into something more metaphysical, something more spiritual. It's made of about maybe 10 or 12 different landscapes. This one is actually in Scotland. I got this on eBay. This is the Mediterranean here. These are two little watercolours. They're not on canvas, they're on board. It's got other interesting little landscapes. So on the back, it has the landscape, it has a little wood with a little lost sheep, a mouton perdu. And then on this side, it has a very beautiful watercolour. This painting, which is quite big here, I bought for £5 in a kind of vide-grenier in London. It was lying on the ground. And actually, was it not in terrible condition? It was all around the edge, was all broken and everything else. But when it's cut and given form and three-dimensionality, it becomes crisp and kind of beautiful. It's a funny thing, it gives it structure. This painting you would not notice if it was lying on the ground. And yet, now it seems to have the most subtle aerial perspective, you know, the atmosphere, the distance going back, the slope. It's really very beautiful. I like funny things. I mean, I like things which are meant to be serious, which are funny, and I think you can often find the serious in a joke. You know, jokes can be, of course, a great weapon. So, yeah, so there is a humour. I think that humour is derided as something superficial or unimportant and you know, not serious, but actually it is very, very serious. And what it does is it stops dogma. It stops us thinking that our system of belief is the law. If we constantly make jokes and undercut things, it can be annoying, but also it means that beliefs are a little bit less secure and we become more pragmatic, we become more open, more liberal. I think it's interesting to use these materials that bring with them poetry. They have personality, they have history, and at the same time it enables something very, very plain and simple and childlike to have another level, to have a significance, have something a little bit more profound, so that a little toy lorry appears to say something poetic, a little bit important. I think when the exhibition is finishing, it should be like this, ready to go home. And I have told the authorities that that is my wish.